Hey guys, this is Tyler Hooks with Tekno RC, and on this week we're going to do our first video on from the manual to the track. And the first thing that we're going to tackle is getting your servo in correctly, making sure that your steering rack is straight, and then setting your trim or your sub trim for the steering. A lot of people overlook actually making sure that the steering rack is straight in the car. It's not one of those things that you often really think about, and it's something that I wish I had learned a lot sooner. But basically, you can't get full throw to one side or the other depending on which way your steering rack is crooked. So if you have your steering rack off to the side but your wheels are straight, then you're not going to get full throw one direction. So it's really important when you build your car the first time, or even after 6 months of running or whatever, to just go back, turn your car on, and when your car's at center, check and see where your steering rack is and make sure that it's straight. So we're going to go through how to do that, and then how to set your trim or your sub trim. Some radios are different. They'll have just a trim or just a sub trim. Some will have both. And it's just making sure you know that you have your wheels going straight and that your steering rack is straight and you have your toe set right. So let's get on with it. All right, guys, so this is basically where the manual stops. And we've got our servo in the car. We've got our servo horn on our steering link. All the car is all the way put together. Got tires on it just to make it easier to do this process. And basically what we're gonna do now is I've just turned on the car for, as you could say, the first time, or the first time after a rebuild. And I wanna make sure that I get my steering horn on as centered as I possibly can before I go ahead and set the steering rack and then set the toe. So I find it easiest that I leave the servo horn off of the car when I do this process, because I want to make sure that my servo actually centers when I turn the car on, and it's not all set up wrong and then I have to redo it again when I turn the car on. So my car is on, my servo's centered. Now I'm going to actually take the time to put the link on as close as I can to center. So it looks like that's going to be the spot. Go ahead and put the screw in. And per usual, what you can see when I raise the camera up is that the tires are off center. That's generally what happens when you build a new car and you go ahead and try to set it up for the first time. But this is where most people get a little bit confused. They start looking at the tires and they're like, oh, the tires are not in the right spot. That's what I need to focus on. But what you should really focus on first is your steering rack. If you look at the steering rack here is off-centered. You can see that this screw is way closer to the center top plate than this screw. So we want to try to get that centered out first, because that's going to make sure that you get full throw left to right. So I'm going to go to my steering trim or sub trim setting and center that out first. So if you look at it now, I need to do just a little bit more. So now when you look at it, this screw and this screw are virtually the same distance from the center top plate. So that's about as centered as I'm gonna be able to get my steering rack just without measuring anything. Now that you have your steering rack centered, you have your servo horn on, now you can focus on your wheels and check and see where your wheels are at and if they're going straight. And you can see that my wheels are going to the right just a little bit more than I would like. So instead of straightening up the steering rack or changing the sub trim to get the wheels straight, what I'll actually do is take a link adjustment tool and actually change the links for the toe to make sure that I can get my wheels straight. And then once I do that, the steering rack will still be centered, my servo horn will be in the right spot, and I'll actually be able to get full throw left and right. So it's really important that you start with the steering rack and then you move to your wheels to make sure that the wheels go forward. And you can make minor adjustments here and there using the sub trim if your car is not going straight, but it's really important to every once in a while go back and check and make sure that everything is pretty much centered right in the center of the car, and then work your way out. All right, guys, so this was our first video from the manual to the track, where we start talking about how to set up your sub trim or your trim, and how to make sure your wheels are going straight and your steering rack is centered. We plan on doing a lot more of these to cover the topics that get you, as we've said, from the manual to the track. This was by no means perfect, and we would love for you to tell us what you would like to see next, what you didn't like about the video, what you did like about the video, and what you have trouble with. So hit us up on any of our social media platforms, use the contact us form on the website, and let us know what's going on, what you would like to see next, and we'll see you at the track. So thank you.